Hi everyone, it's Karolyn here with a project for the December release class. My project is a quick set of 4 cards that are each different but similar in their layout and design. They feature the new Stitched Basic Edges 2 Dynamics, the Wavy Coloring Book background stamp, the Kind Words stamp set, and the Kind and Kindness Dynamics, all new this month. I'll show you how I made one of the cards from the set and then show you the rest of the finished cards at the end. I'm starting with my full-sized MISTI stamping tool to stamp the Wavy Coloring Book background stamp onto a piece of smooth white cardstock that measures 5.5 inches by 8.5 inches. I've removed the foam pad inside my MISTI to accommodate the rubber stamp, and I'm adhering the white cardstock to the grid paper using some temporary adhesive. This way the cardstock won't shift while I'm stamping. Once I have the cardstock in place and secured with the MISTI magnets, I'm going to generously ink up the stamp with black licorice hybrid ink. The MFT hybrid inks are the most versatile blend of inks, in my opinion, because they're not only great general stamping inks, but they're also Copic friendly. They're a great way to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Once I've inked up the stamp, I give some firm pressure to make sure all the ink is transferred to the cardstock, and then I remove it from my MISTI. I'm using the stitched rectangle die from the Blueprints 25 Dynamics to die cut the stamp background panel. This will give me a full A2 size panel with that great stitch detail on the outside edge. Now I'm using the Stitched Basic Edges 2 Dynamics to die cut a strip from the lower portion of the stamp panel. I use my grid mat to perfectly position the edge die onto the panel and secure it with some washi tape. This will ensure that the die doesn't shift while I'm running it through my manual die cutting machine. I repeat this process a second time, again aligning the panel with the die using my grid mat and securing the die with some washi tape. I also found that if I secured the panel to my grid mat with washi, it was easier for me to align the die. Ultimately, I cut about a 1/4 inch from the lower portion of the image panel, and you'll see why in the next step. I've trimmed my smooth white card base to 5.5 inches by 8.5 inches, and I'm using my scoreboard to score at 4.25 inches. I folded the card base in half and perfected the crease with a Teflon bone folder. You can see that the die cut images now fit perfectly on the card base, leaving about a 1/4 inch blank space. I've set aside the stamped images for now, and I'm using some wide post-it tape to mask off an open area on the card base. I want to leave about 1.5 inches exposed in the lower half of the card base. This should be enough room so that when I replace the stamped image, the curved area isn't blocked by the masking tape. This is where I'll be doing some ink blending and stamping the sentiment. It looks like I need a little more room on the bottom, so I'm readjusting the masking tape. Thank goodness for my grid mat. It really helps me align things. Now let's do some ink blending. For this sample, I'm using Tumbled Glass, Mermaid Lagoon, and Blueprint Sketch Distress inks, along with a mini ink blending tool. I'm such a fan of ink blending. I think it adds amazing depth and interest to what would otherwise be a boring old card. There's a bit of a learning curve, but once you get the hang of it, the ink blending possibilities are endless. I generally try to pair 2 or 3 colors that will blend well together, and I usually start with the middle color. Here, I started with the Mermaid Lagoon, and now I'm adding the Tumbled Glass. Another tip that I found helpful is to be sure and load up your ink blending tool with plenty of ink, and then blend some of it onto some scratch paper before applying it to your card base. This helps avoid leaving those harsh streaks and blotches that are sometimes hard to blend out. I almost always use smooth white cardstock when I'm ink blending because it truly is smooth. As for technique, there's no perfect science to it. You just keep adding color until you're happy with the result. I start off the edge of the paper and tilt my ink blending tool ever so slightly. I use a pretty light hand to start because you can always add color, but you can't take it away. It's best to build the color, starting out lightly and layering more color on top. It might take 2 or 3 applications of each color before you're happy. I continue to blend the colors, overlapping them slightly, until I get the appearance that the 3 colors are seamlessly blended. I find the ink blending process to be somewhat therapeutic, and the results are almost always so gratifying. Once I'm happy with the results, I remove that masking tape and reveal the beautiful colors. The bold and vibrant colors just take my breath away. Now it's time to do some stamping. I temporarily reposition the stamped image panel back onto the card base with some temporary tape runner. This will help me position my stamp, especially on that curved area. I selected several of the sentiment stamps from the new Kind Words stamp set, and I'm going to stamp them in that beautiful ink blended area. But in order to have my stamp follow the curve of the image panel, I need to apply more temporary tape runner. I place the card base into my Mini MISTI, secure it with the magnets, and place the sentiment stamp in that ink blended area. The temporary adhesive should keep the stamp in place long enough to get it secured to the door of the Mini MISTI. Once I have my stamp in place, this next step is a critical one, so pay close attention. I've been using a lot of temporary adhesive, and the distress inks themselves have a lot of moisture in them. I plan to heat emboss the sentiments, so it's important to first remove all the temporary adhesive and then use an anti-static magic bag to prep the area for stamping. I'm using Sweet Tooth pigment ink to ink up that sentiment, and then I stamp it onto the card base, applying light pressure to make sure the ink transfers. I sprinkle some white detail embossing powder onto the stamped image, and have heat embossed it off camera. I'm applying lots of foam tape to the back of the stamped image panels, and I adhere them in place on the card base. I find that it's easier to align an image panel with the card base if I flip it upside down. I can't honestly tell you why that works, it just works for me, so I thought I'd throw it out there in case it helps you too. Once those image panels are in place, it's time to take care of the final details of the card. I'm going to die cut the Kind and Kindness Dynamics, once from black licorice cardstock and 3 times from smooth white cardstock. I find that detailed dies like word dies can sometimes be difficult to cut all the way through with standard cutting plates, so I like to use the precision base plate for detailed dies. I use it instead of my bottom cutting pad. It's a great tool to have and saves a lot of time. By using that precision base plate, you can see that my word die cut pops out pretty easily. I'm repeating that last step again, only this time die cutting the word die from smooth white cardstock, and I did this 3 times. Once again, that precision base plate made easy work of removing those detailed die cuts. I've adhered 2 of the white die cuts together off camera using Ranger Multimedia Matte Adhesive. I'm showing you how I adhered the last white layer here. I like using the matte medium adhesive because it dries clear and doesn't show if any excess adhesive escapes. It's also a really strong adhesive. Once I get the white layer adhered, I do the same thing again with the last layer, the black word die cut. Stacked die cuts like this are a great way to add texture and dimension to a card, and I think they add a really fun pop of interest. Now I'm adhering the assembled word die cut to the card base with more matte medium adhesive. The fine line tip bottle really helps apply adhesive to those small detailed areas. I've actually placed all of my favorite adhesives in these bottles. Next, I'm applying a light coat of Clear Week of Stella onto that word die cut. A little bit of glitter never hurts, right? The finishing touch to these cards is to add a coat of glossy accents to that glittery word die cut. The glossy accents really magnifies those glitter fragments, which is such an amazing effect. Here's a close-up of each of the finished cards in this set. I used a different stitched edge, a different sentiment, and a different combo of blended distress inks for each card. The bold colors popping out of that funky black and white background is quite a sight, don't you think? The final result is kind of trippy, but really fun and unexpected. And who doesn't want to spread a little kindness in today's world? I know I do. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I really hope you enjoyed it and that you'll have fun making your own set of quick kindness cards. See you next time.